Today's ride on my Riese Müller Superdelite Adventure Ebike, my GoPro Hero 10, audio didn't work. So I'm going to do a voiceover as I watch the video from today's ride. Also during the ride, the GoPro Hero 10 overheated. Actually at a really bad time because there was another another biker on the road that let me try to keep up with them, which would have been pretty cool looking footage. So this is my first ride with the 155mm cranks and new pedals. So new cranks, new pedals. I went to Seacoast Ebikes. Shane changed the crank length from 170 to 155. During the ride, I did not hit any rocks or roots. In addition, I also added air to the Fox suspension, front and rear. The rear was roughly about 100 psi below what it should have been, based upon my weight. I'm a normal road biker, and this bike allows me to go off roads. These roads are easy, but soon on my left I passed a path that I turned around to go to. That was more complicated. But so far, the bike is performing great. I personally love the 155 cranks. And this is where I turn around and say to myself, let's loosen the suspension because I have it on the medium. So going to left locks it, and then I believe I turn it to the right, which now gives me more suspension, more travel. One of the things I noticed when I was on this road was I was bouncing over the place. The front shock, I also made it more bouncy. The water bottles I do really like, but the handlebars do hit them. I did upgrade the handlebars from what was original in the bike, but it doesn't affect the riding. If I have to turn them more, I turn them more, and the bottles are flexible. This is Friday. Today we had a big storm, so I wanted to get out on the bike, try it out before the storm. I did make it back safely before the storm. I was chit-chatting the whole time, so it sort of stinks that I don't have any audio. But I have never been on this path. And what's cool is, from my previous riding videos, I pretty much said, this is the reason why I want to ride this bike. I don't want to go on the road. It's a class 1 bike, which gives it pedal assist up to 18 miles an hour. And what I figured out on these types of paths, I don't need to go above 18 miles an hour. So far, I'm loving it. The 155 cranks, the pedals for it, new handlebars. First ride on this. And like I mentioned, Shane from Seacoast Ebikes went into the Bosch system and updated the crank length, which is something that they recommend. I have the bike on mountain bike, which I think sort of restricts how fast you can go or how much torque you have. When I first got on this path, there seemed to be a lot of puppies up people walking their puppies. This type of road is nothing for this bike, but a little bit later on I did get onto some more technical roads, and then with really severe tree roots and rocks and stuff, and I don't normally ride on these types of roads, so I think my confidence level is not extremely high. Would have been nice to have the audio, but hopefully the voiceovers comes through. I'll revisit this road again, but one of the things I did notice is when I got to the more technical aspects, I am out of shape. And riding these types of roads, you have to work a lot harder than being on a road, even on an e-bike. When I was following the other biker, which that footage is not available because my GoPro overheated in addition to not capturing audio, but you can see now I'm bouncing over the place, going over these rocks and tree roots, and this upgraded 155mm cranks with the proper air pressure and the Fox suspension. I did not strike the cranks pedals, which increased my confidence level. I'm not used to going over bridges like this, so I'm always afraid of like hitting the handlebars and then crashing. I think after I do this a few more times, my confidence level will increase. I did have my little blinky light on, wearing my Seacoast riding vest, and I do have a tail light blinky on. But lots of people walking the puppies. But you can see now I'm going over these rocks and did not strike the pedals or the cranks, which made me pretty happy. I also decided upon myself, of course, and after some research and talking to mountain bikers and watching YouTube videos and even talking unofficially to a Riese Müller rep, nobody really considers this a mountain bike. Nobody would buy this bike for mountain biking, but I think it's amazing for adventures. And this type of riding for me is an adventure. I would never consider doing this on my Homage. This has a 26 Fox suspension in the front, knobby tires, 100%. I would, this is what I think the bike is great for. And what I ended up doing, from being too excited, I ended up taking some pictures with my iPhone. Puffy white clouds before the storm, showing the increased distance. I wanted to make sure I had the pedals down. And if you have an iPhone, when you take photos, you can capture in RAW, which gives you more dynamic range. Also, what you can do is, if you really want to, if you have the software like Adobe Photoshop or etc., I made sure I had the clouds in, and then you can do a HDR, combine both of them together. So I'm showing that, talking the whole time. I'll post in the video, I'll have some pop-ups. September, the iPhone 14 is coming out. I only upgrade if the camera's better. I use this a lot. I take photos and video, and the best camera you have is the one you have with you. So the tip is put the camera on raw, use your more dynamic range, and then if you have Photoshop or etc., what I'm showing is you can get all the clouds, keep them in, and then try not to move the phone too much, and then now get the bicycle in. That's what I'm showing there. No rear rack. I do have the water bottles. I can see what people do when they do off-roading like this. They have a Camelback in the back, but I do have these bottles. They were half frozen, but it's so humid out. And now I'm taking some photos of the distance of the 155 cranks. Showing, as you can see with that one, that I have plenty of distance, so no rubbing of the 155s. Before the storm arrived, it's puffy white clouds, but it was no wind and very humid. Later on, I got so exhausted. I didn't have my heart rate monitor on because I wanted just to do a fast ride, but I think I need to keep the heart rate monitor on, which is a Bluetooth, which I can have on the Kiage. But this bike, with the longer suspension travel, wider handlebars, no close fenders, because I think when you're going over rocks and such, so I'm happy. I think this is for this type of riding was great. And I'm going to assume Riese Müller won't change the name of it, but I think they need to come up with more of a mountain bike per se. But this, I didn't know this was here either. It was looks like a community section off plants and such, vegetables maybe. I don't know. I have not been over here before, so this is right where I live. This is what I'm going to use this bike for. Sort of stinks that I didn't get the footage with the other mountain biker, or with the other biker, because I think having somebody in front of you is sort of cool. So like I mentioned before, this is the first time on this road, and I'll 100% go back to it. I'm just checking things out. Cool, they have a porta potty. Like I mentioned before, I'm not an off-roader. This is very new to me. I've only ridden on-road bikes. My confidence level is not zero, but it's not anywhere it needs to be aggressive on these types of off-roading. But this is an adventure bike with more travel, more comfort. So I'm going to refer to this Riese Müller Superdelite as an adventure bike, almost like the BMW GSA adventure bike. From what I've read or seen or heard, you can't jump with these bikes like a mountain bike, and they are heavier. Even being an e-bike, when I was trying to keep up with the other gentleman that was on a non-e-bike, it's also, I'm out of shape. But this, if you're in Lexington, Belmont area, this bike path is pretty phenomenal. And I'm learning to keep the pedals level, horizontal, if you're going over a bunch of rocks or tree roots. Sometimes you do have to pedal if you're going uphill, And during this, I did not hit any roots or rocks with the 155s. And I think a big thing is also having the proper air pressure based on your weight on the suspension. But this was, and that little cord that's popping in and out is, it's from the battery to the GoPro. Gotta make sure that's behind. This is not as smooth as being on the road, of course, but having the shocks on flexi or cushion really made the ride fun. So far this has been not overly technical, but now this section, as you can see, with all the tree roots, now gets a little bouncy. And now I think every time you see more of the models, I'm standing up. I do have the GoPro Hero 10 on -1 for the exposure compensation. But when I was attempting to follow the other biker, which I don't have any of that footage, which sort of stinks. I think the camera overheated and I wasn't checking it. When you're doing this type of riding, you don't really have much time to think about anything. But hopefully, with the voiceover, I will be going back on this road. I will hopefully have the audio. I do have a bell, but I think the bike is so noisy, I think those people heard me without the bell. It's almost, you just have to so I'm hanging on for dear life. My confidence level is not high, so I'm slowly walking the bike over the bridge. I have no idea where I am, so I'm just winging it. So the upgrades, I went from 170 to 155 on the crank. I have internal bearing flat pedals that were great. I did get a SKS rear fender far away from the bike. I do have a bell, and I did have the chain from Seacoast Ebikes give me the mounting screws for the Fabrique water bottles, which mountain bikers don't use, but I think adventure bikers will. So when you see this angle of the video, I'm standing up. It's nice that I have my hands on the brakes. And on my homage, I would not be able to go over this tree trunk. So I'm getting a little bit more confident on my off-roading skills. And if you don't shift soon enough, as you see my right hand, I'm shifting down the Rohloff. Now you have to walk it up. It's all about being prepared. And for me, I have to really tip over the bike, the Superdelite, to get onto it. Shane from Seacoast said, "Hey, this is how to get on a bike that's not step through." And I'm like, "Oh, never thought about that." I was always able to lift my leg up, but now my right leg, I can hardly lift up. So tipping the bike way over. Like I mentioned, I've never been on this path before, so I'm just winging it as I'm riding. really sort of stinks I don't have that footage with the other biker. That ended up being really cool, even though I can hardly keep up, but I had it for a few moments. It was pretty cool having somebody in front of me. But this is just proof of concept that the 155 cranks with the proper Fox air pressure in the suspension did allow me to go on some complicated off-roading today without bottoming out, striking the cranks on the rocks and tree roots. So very happy. And like I mentioned, you have to have the crank length updated by your Riese Muller dealer. You can't do it yourself. The whole footage that I had with the other biker didn't happen because of the overheating of the GoPro, which sort of ticks me off, but it was very hot and humid today. So this is afterwards, and trying to keep up with that person, I was completely out of breath. I had to stop and just, if I had my heart rate monitor on, I'm going to assume it was pretty high. He was nice, he waited for me, but even with an e-bike, I couldn't keep up with him. He had a hardtail non-e-bike, and he was just flying along. This is me not having any idea where I am. And if you don't have the speed, me personally, I have to walk over these rocks. But I'm hoping it catches on. I think Superdelite Adventure bike sounds more realistic than Mountain. I think if they consider marketing this to more adventurous biking, like what I'm doing today for this video, I think that would do pretty well. The Superdelite regular bike doesn't have the longer suspension, so if Riese Müller ever watches this video, that'd be sort of cool if they think about changing this name of this specific bike to Adventure bike. And I think they also should have the 155 cranks as standard, because like I mentioned, I didn't hit any rocks, and this is rocky right here, and I did not change. You have to think about changing down before you get to those types of uphill situations. Plus I was pretty out of breath. I'm not in the best shape of my life. Plus I haven't ridden my bike for a little while. And this is just almost like a shakedown ride just to see how it works. But luckily I ended up not far from, this is where I first got on this path. So lucky for me, I got here. And I am like really out of breath. That was a hard workout. But I'm going to definitely do it again. Hopefully, I never really had audio not work on a GoPro with the media mod, but you can see 6.1 miles. I was really out of breath. I was exhausted. And I got home and I was able to sit on a bench and rest for like 30 minutes. Just cool off outside. But normally I would be going up a lot faster, but I was really exhausted. But I can safely say that the Riese Müller Superdelite, what they call Mountain, but I'm going to call it Adventure. That's my new name for it. With the 155 millimeter cranks and having the proper air pressure and the shocks, became very good. So sorry for the audio, but hopefully the voiceover did pretty well. And if you have any questions, please let me know, but I'll definitely be going back on this bike. Have a good one.